Welcome to Off the Clock, the webcast of employment attorneys at Miller Johnson, where we discuss what is happening in the HR world and provide practical insight and advice. We are your co-hosts, Rebecca Strauss and Sarah Willey, two employment lawyers who spend their days guiding employers through all of the challenges that workplaces offer. Good morning, Rebecca.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I am excellent today because I am excited about something that we're going to have to talk about next time.
Live in the moment, Sarah.
I know.
Okay, so what's next time?
Are you ready? Federal paid sick time and paid FMLA.
I should have assumed that.
I know.
You said you were excited.
Near and dear to my heart.
Should have known that.
President Biden unveiled his proposed plan. So the reason I'm excited is because that's going to be fun to talk about for the next few years. So
fun for us, not for our clients.
Yeah,
right. Let's
it's
be empathetic with
them,
how other folks might be reacting to
Although I'll tell you what, increasingly with the number of states that have their own requirements, the idea of a federal requirement that could potentially take precedent over this weird patchwork is intriguing for clients. But as I said, we're going to save that for next time because we promised all of our listeners, right? All two, that today we were going to circle back and follow up on our remote work discussion and really dive a bit more into what employers should be doing with regard to their employees who are working remotely from home, whatever term we're going to use.
Right. And you know what you said at the beginning, though, with Biden's proposal and how some employers might actually be relieved to have a federal mandatory paid leave law so they don't have to deal with the patchwork system anymore, actually relates directly to what we're talking about today. I know you didn't plan that, did you?
Never, no.
When you said it, I thought, did she think about that just for this episode?
I did not, no.
Because let's think about what it means to have remote workers in different places, including different states and perhaps even different countries, which we saw over the last year.
Oh, goodness.
It's almost like having a separate satellite office of one. So, for instance, when Rebecca wants to work remotely and is granted that permission to work 100% remote from her home in California.
Oh, gosh.
It's
anywhere but California.
We'll get to that in a minute. But employers are thinking about it this way. Right. But it's the equivalent of your business opening a satellite office in California.
Yeah.
And let's pause there for just a moment because I think the HR folks listening to this, I think their stomachs just flipped.
Right.
Thinking about it that way. And now we're opening up remote offices maybe in 2, 3, 20, 50 states at the same time. And what is all the legwork that we need to do to make sure we're treating people consistently and legally, right? With the patchwork of laws that existed.
Yeah, I mean, a year ago, we had an unexpected global pandemic.
Did we?
We did. Oh. And it's still here. But people were unexpectedly forced to begin working from home, right?
No planning.
At least those who were working in offices. Obviously, many employees, our healthcare workers, manufacturing employees, our grocery store employees, God bless them, didn't have that luxury. But for all of those individuals who have been working remotely or from home over the last year or more, they were kind of sent home. And I'm not sure a lot of organizations thought through what that all meant or got their ducks in a row in a way that us employment lawyers would love to see. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that 100%, but I also don't want to place blame
on
the organization. There just wasn't time.
Yes,
I mean, let's just be honest.
Absolutely.
It wasn't for lack of anything. It was just lack of time.
Well, and if you were in Michigan, you were trying to keep track of the, 5 or so executive orders that were coming out every day, along with the changes in federal law.
That's right.
Absolutely no blame there. But it is, in my view, absolutely the right time now to sort of take a step back.
Right.
I think to some degree for many, many companies, some amount of hybrid or remote work is going to continue.
Yes.
And so they really do need to take a step back and think about policies. Do they have a policy in place? Have these people signed remote work agreements? Where are employees working? Are we in compliance with those state laws, et cetera? So where do they start?
Yes. I think we start with the policy.
Oh,
right?
I mean, that's music to our ears, right?
If there's something we love, it's coffee
and a good policy.
And I'm not even sure how I drink those.
Depends on what time it is, I suppose.
Depends on the day, the time of day,
right.
and what kind of coffee is in the coffee cup. Mm-hmm. But we do love a good policy, not because it helps guide behavior and expectations, but because in writing the policy, right, it forces leaders and HR to come together, collaborate, one of our buzzwords, right, when talking about remote work, collaborate and think about what do we want to actually see happen here? What do we want our standards to be? And then the writing of the policy is merely, it's a document that expresses that collaborative effort. But in my opinion, it's the process of coming up with what you policy to say that is so helpful to dealing with problems as they pop up. But can a policy cover everything that might pop up, Sarah?
Oh, no.
No. Right. Every HR person in the world knows that.
Right. Sure.
So let's play a little game. Let's just go back and forth, kind of like one of those road trip games we played as a kid, or maybe our kids still play, right? Where each one has to go back and forth and come up with something with a different letter of the alphabet. Let's do something like that and talk about what would we like to see in a remote work policy. We don't have to start with a certain letter of the alphabet, though.
Oh, thank God.
We do not. Frankly, I'm not smart enough to make that happen.
I'm not sure we'd get to Z. Right?
I don't think so. No. But let's start off. I'm just going to start off with one of my favorites because it's so simple. I think when I say it, everyone's going to say, oh, of course.
Right.
But we rarely actually see it in draft policies. A statement that says all of the employer's policies apply equally to employees who are working in our facility or working from home or remotely or whatever phrase the employer chooses.
Excellent point. Yep. Right? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would be hard pressed to think of a policy that wouldn't apply.
Right.
My initial instincts were to say, well, maybe the harassment policy might not apply if employees are not in person together, except that I know based on
that it does.
based on lots of phone calls about workplace issues that people can engage in inappropriate conduct and behavior all the time.
Oh my.
Electronically, right?
Let's talk about that for just a moment because we could talk about that for an hour or two, right? And we don't want to get sidetracked on that. But let's remember, and this has been causing issues in Zoom, at least the side chat function, right? Where you can message someone directly during a meeting. So there are these side conversations, which are a little harder in a live meeting, to be honest.
Yeah.
It reminds me kind of passing notes in class.
Sure.
Which people don't do live usually in the corporate setting. But on Zoom, right, we're seeing people make little comments to each other.
Right.
The other thing I want to talk about, and I don't have an answer for this, I'd love to know your thoughts. A lot of times when there's allegations of harassment, we physically separate people, at least during the investigation. And sometimes, right, the remedy is to keep people physically separated. So are people separated? Does it count when they're working remotely from each other, but may see each other on Zoom.
I think the answer to that largely depends on the opinions of the people involved, quite frankly. Right? And my starting place would be probably to talk to, depending on the circumstances, either or both. Right?
Right.
Do you feel comfortable being in the same Zoom meeting as Rebecca, given all the teasing she gave?
We don't participate in the same.
Right. Exactly. So, to me, that would be the starting point to get their input as to whether or not they're comfortable doing that. And then if the answer is no, to try to take it from there. So, okay, is it my turn to say my favorite? Because that made me think of something.
Because we could talk about this for a very long, how to harass people remotely.
So so my first choice for something that should be in a policy is not something that I would have thought of before COVID and my remote work experience.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
This is a new one. And that is appropriate behavior for Zoom meetings or team meetings, whatever we're calling.
God, yes.
Meetings, right? Like how, number one, can they be recorded? Is that allowed?
I've gotten that question so many times.
Right. Well, because guess why? They're being recorded, right? A lot of employees are feeling more free to be recorded. Do we have dress standards? Do we have
top and bottom?
Top and bottom. What about if you're in a meeting, maybe not just with coworkers, but with people outside of the organization? Do we have standards for background, right? Is it okay for you to be in a bedroom with an unmade bed in the background, which is kind of strange, right? So that is, I would like to see a remote policy think through what our basic standards are for communicating, particularly on camera when you're working remotely.
Does the camera have to be on?
Yes.
For client meetings, for internal meetings, for whatever. I agree with you. That is something that even organizations that had remote work policies in the past never talked about.
Sure.
Right? At least in my experience, I never saw that in a policy, but that has come up over and over.
Should you be walking around your house doing chores and other things well on camera in a meeting, for example?
Can you have your camera off but be driving during an important
We could
meeting.
go on and on.
Yes.
We could go on and on. Okay, so your turn. What would you like to see to be in a policy?
Okay, so we knew FMLA was going to get you going. The beginning of this. So my equivalent of that is the FLS.
Oh, goodness. Yes.
Yeah. And by the way, the FMLA is part of the Fair Labor Standards Act.
I do.
So when I say FLSA, it's all, but I'm not including FMLA. Okay. So let's talk about what I would like to see in remote work agreements. It has to do with timekeeping and the hours of work and expectations and all of that. This obviously may differ for exempt employees versus non-exempt employees. You can consider having two different policies, perhaps, right? Or actually switching in and out. Right. Or you should at least have for exempt employees X or for non-exempt employees.
Here are the rules.
You are going to have work hours where you are expected to be available, right? And here they are. Or maybe not. Some employers may agree to flexible, right? Or folks who drop in and out. But you should be clear with the employee on those expectations, right? When you formalize this relationship. So there's no misunderstanding, right?
Sure.
And we need to talk about how are you going to record your hours? And again, that could be a whole nother hour webinar or podcast, but there's lots of different ways, right? There's apps for phones. There's ways when people log on to their computers. You can still fill out handwritten timesheets, right? And then they can scan them in or take a picture and send them to you. There's all sorts of options, but you should be very, very clear.
They need to be tracking their time, right?
They need to be tracking their time. And start time, stop time, break time. Obviously, this is for non-exempt employees, and time away from work.
So just like they would in the workplace,
they
need to be tracking their time. Because I don't think, well, I'll put it this way. I think a lot of non-exempt employees are not being required to do that right now.
I think that's right, because we were in emergency mode. We were in crisis mode, going back to how we started this, right?
Yeah.
We were in crisis mode, and we didn't think through the nitty-gritty details on best practices. But now we're shifting out of crisis mode into this is going to be a long-term situation. So now let's take a deep breath and think about what is best practice, right?
On that, so just to be clear, when we have a non-exempt employee and we've told them what their expected work hours are, right? I'm seeing a lot of leaders then who may be exempt doing their work maybe later in the evening.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And for many reasons right now, right? So they'll be catching up later in the evening after 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And in doing so, they're sending emails to non-exempt employees.
Right.
Who then are responding outside of their work hours. And I just want to be real clear. We have to pay them for that work, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And any work time, unless it's de minimis, which is such a unique exception that you should always assume that work time is not going to fall into that exception. Just assume that.
One example might be just responding, thanks, I'll get back to you tomorrow, would be a de minimis. But
hey, can you work tomorrow even though it was your day off because so-and-so called in? Sure.
Right. That's de minimis.
That's de minimis.
But anything other than that, because we, in large part, I think maybe more in the midst of COVID, but even so now, I think for organizations that are still performing a lot of remote work, this 9 to 5 workday has become very fluid.
And by the way, some employees really appreciate that. Some non-exempt employees, that's a huge benefit of working from home and this flexible work. We're not saying you can't do that, but you think about it. In writing the policy, you have to think through what you really want.
And understand you're going to have to pay them if they're doing work outside of the normal work hours.
Yes.
Got it.
And train, to your point, train your supervisors that if that's not going to be acceptable for you, if that is the decision you have made as an organization, supervisors should not be trying to contact employees outside of regular work hours.
Okay, so I've got...
what's next for you?
I've got one, and this conversation made me think of it. A requirement that if you are not working for X period of time, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's a half day, maybe it's a day, you have to use PTO.
Okay,
especially for non-exempt employees. Because I can't
how
tell you
has that happened over the last year.
I can't tell you how many clients I've had say to me, somehow our employees didn't use any PTO when they were all working remotely over the last year. None.
This has happened everywhere at every organization. Yes. That is why I am laughing. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. Yeah. And this isn't really part of a remote work policy. This may be a PTO policy. But organizations may want to relook at their PTO policy and decide how much time is going to be able to be carried over, for instance, if they're going to be able to cash out. Maybe in recognition that when people are working from home, they're not marking off every hour or two. Maybe they want to relook at their PTO policies too, right? Just to make sure. Yeah. That it's consistent with their expectations and goals as an organization.
And how that works may continue to evolve.
Absolutely.
As time goes on. But for now, I would say if you've got a traditional PTO policy and you've got really, I mean, it's more important with non-exempt employees in my mind, but also exempt, who are missing certain amounts of time, they should be expecting to use their PTO to cover that.
Yes. Yeah. But obviously... folks haven't because no one knows if they're there or not some days. All right. I've got another one, and it's super short, but again, I love it. We can revoke permission for you to work remotely at any time at our discretion. Right? Yeah. And let me just, that doesn't really require a lot of explanation, but let me expand that just for a second, if you'll allow me. the whole policy, the whole expectation that the employer has decided upon for its workforce can be changed or modified at any time. So back to our last podcast where we were discussing, should you allow it? Should you not? Should you allow what if you make the best decision you can
and then
after 6 months you realize
it's not working.
This isn't working. We want to go in a different direction. Give yourself the space to make those changes. And then that's like the broad view. And then we trickle down, right? To the actual policy or agreement that the employee will sign. I think it's important to set their expectations clearly.
Yeah.
That while we're agreeing to this today, it may not work forever.
Yeah. And I would add on to that, I like some sort of additional statement that maybe if there's job performance concerns, they may be asked to work in person for a period of time, if that is something that would be helpful. So, for example, if they're working remotely, but their direct supervisor is in person and there's job performance concerns, we're not really sure what exactly they're doing and when, right? We've got that ability to say, look, you need to come work in person until we can get our arms around this.
Yes.
And so I like using that maybe as an example of when they might be asked to come work in person.
Very important. Yes. Okay. What else do you want to see in a policy? Do you have another one?
Yeah, this is kind of one that probably would come to a lot of people's mind, but who is responsible for providing what equipment?
Yes, that's come up a lot.
And who owns it? It has come up a lot. Lots of employees were coming back into the workplace in the dark of night and taking chairs and monitors and things like that in the height of COVID. Not naming any names, Rebecca, but I do seem to remember that. So organizations should be thinking through and putting into a policy who's responsible for those things. And that ties into the safety issue, which we can talk about next. So I like to see that. And there's quite frankly, there's no right or wrong answer. Although I will say some states have laws that do require employers to provide and pay for equipment if it's used for work.
Interesting.
Any guess as to what state might have a law like that?
We have not talked about this before, but I'm just going to guess California.
California. Yes. So,
yeah, not surprising.
So when you're thinking through that issue, you're going to want to be familiar with the requirements in different states on that too. But otherwise, you just need to decide, are you going to give employees a stipend to buy things and then they're theirs? Or is it going to be company property that you're going to provide, et cetera?
Do they have to return it if their employment ends? And how will that work
how
if you're
will
in Michigan
you get it
and
back?
they're in California?
Right. Are you going to show up at their house and get their things, right?
Yes, that would be awkward.
Yes.
Depending on the reason they left.
Yes. And to your point, and if they're across the country, that's a whole nother issue. Exactly.
We could come up with a whole cottage industry, couldn't we, Sarah? Picking up things from former workers that need to be...
We could, although this is a great business idea, renting home office, employers renting home office equipment from some sort of third party that then drops it off and picks it back up.
Let's not talk about this anymore while people are listening.
Yeah.
Right, a talk offline.
Yes, exactly. That's a great idea.
It is a great idea.
Okay.
All right, here's what else I would like to see in a policy. And this can include a number of different things. I'm just going to bundle it all up into performance standards.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I think that HR folks, supervisors assume employees know that their standards for performance, right, timeliness of responding, work quality of work product, et cetera, should be the same. But I'm telling you, I think not all employees clearly understand it. And I think when it comes to dealing with performance issues on the back end, right, it would really help to have that set in writing so that an employee says, well, I mean, if I was in the office, right, I could have done that, but at home, my laptop screen is too small. I can't see the whole spreadsheet at the same time. It's impossible to expect me to, right? I'm just making up spreadsheets. I don't really know what I'm talking about.
Right.
But it would be impossible for you to expect me to do a 500, column row spreadsheet on my little laptop screen. So I didn't think that's what you expected since I was at home.
Right.
Just,
making clear those
stupid
performance
example.
expectations are the same.
Yes. And when you need to respond and when you need to be available for calls.
Yeah.
Et cetera,
and that's a great example of why now is a great time to be looking at these things, because I see a lot of employers struggling with employees who have been working from home and have these performance concerns. Because the truth is, initially when COVID happened, we were all doing the best we could.
That's right.
And many employers, most of us, yes, were more forgiving than they might usually be with regard to job performance.
Sure.
Okay. Yes. It's a year later now. And so those same employers are trying to think through and get their arms around, what do we do now when we've been patient and forgiving with Sarah's job performance? But really, it can't continue like this indefinitely, right? And so putting a policy in place like this and setting those expectations with those employees now is a fantastic idea.
And let's not expand it a little further from your point, not just performance expectations, but let's face it, when folks were in crisis mode, we were saying this is part of your job, but we're not going to require you to do it right now.
Yeah.
Right? Things that couldn't be done well or efficiently from home.
Okay.
Right? Didn't you see some employers say, well, this is an emergency. The state is telling us you can't come into work, right?
Yeah.
So we didn't have to go through the thought process
right.
of, can this person do 100% of your job responsibilities from home? We just said, you got to be home.
Right.
Right? And so now it's time to sit down and think about it and reestablish.
Can you do your job and can you do it well if you're home all the time, or do you need to be in the office part of the time? Okay.
Yes. Okay. Do you have another one?
I do. Workplace safety.
Oh, God, please don't tell me that OSHA applies when people are working. Oh, goodness gracious.
It does. So a workplace at home is a workplace, meaning an employer does have a minimal responsibility to provide a workplace free of known hazards.
How is an employer supposed to do that?
Well, the good news is they are not required to go into that employee's home and inspect what's happening there and confirm that it's safe. But that's the beauty of a policy, right?
Great.
So, but we absolutely need to clearly communicate to employees what is expected with regard to their home office or where they're working at home, and what the employee's obligations are to make sure that is a safe place, and how they are supposed to then communicate back to the employer if they have concerns in that regard.
I see. So what employers can do to satisfy their obligation is express their expectations to the employee confirm that their workplace is free of hazards, and et cetera, and that is enough. Yes. Is what you're saying. Okay. I think that makes everyone feel much better than how that point started out.
Yes. Well, I like to do that. I like to scare everyone and then provide the solution.
That is the entire business model of a law firm.
It's what we do best. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Is that Miller Johnson's mission statement? No, wait a minute. No. I don't remember what it is, but I don't think that's it. Maybe that should be it. All right. So now it's my turn to add. Okay. I really I have to warn you, I'm running out of steam. So this may be my last one.
Oh, we've got some more. I may win this game. I'm pretty excited. I like winning.
Me.
I like winning. We know that about me. Okay.
Yes, we do. Yeah, you usually can. Let's not run a foot race after this.
Yes, right.
You hinted at this earlier, but I think it should be an explicit element in a policy. That not only can the entire agreement be revoked at the employer's discretion, but from time to time on a regular basis, not because of performance standards, an employee may be expected to come to the office.
Sure, come to an important
team
meeting.
meetings, client pitches,
Sure.
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's important to say out loud because as we're recruiting nationally or internationally, perhaps, let's just say we're in Michigan and you are recruiting someone from California, it's very important to set that expectation. That yes, we're going to hire you, you're going to be allowed to work from your home in California, but just know you're going to be coming to Michigan, probably, pick the number, X amount of times per year, approximately.
Okay.
And we reserve the right to.
All right, I'll give you credit for it.
You too.
I'll count it.
Okay, good.
I'll count it.
Okay.
I'll count it.
That's all I've got on that. You have something else?
I do. An obligation to report any workplace injuries sustained at home.
Oh my gosh.
Workers' comp can apply if somebody is injured while working at home.
That makes my head spin. So if I am at home and my cat bites me, are these the kinds of workers' comp issues we're going to start seeing, Sarah?
I suppose, but this is why I don't do workers' comp law, and we've got some wonderful people here that do.
Yes.
Right?
I am not one of them.
No, I'm not either. But there should definitely be a statement in the policy saying if you sustain an injury while working at home, you do need to report that and follow the workers' comp process. And if you don't, then there could be consequences.
Interesting. Okay, I just came up with another one because I was thinking about cats.
Okay. I can hardly wait.
The start of any great HR policy.
Right.
I think policy should include a statement that says something like, you need a place free of distraction to do your work.
Absolutely.
Right?
And in which you can keep information confidential.
Yes, a private place. Yeah. We deal with that a lot. Yes. Right? Because we're dealing with confidential matters. And I know we have both struggled but found solutions during COVID when we were at home before we were both vaccinated, right? To make sure we were in rooms with doors that closed.
Yes.
When we were having confidential meetings with clients. But really think about whether that's important. Our clients should think about whether that's important to their organizations as well, and be in a place that is free as possible from distractions, cats who might bite, etc. Okay, your turn.
Okay, I got one more, and that is another one that I would not have thought of before COVID, and that is you have to tell us if you move.
Okay, that would be by surprise.
You laugh.
I am laughing.
You laugh, but you would be surprised.
Give me an example of how that caused
You would be surprised at the number of employees who are working from home, quote, from home, and decide to relocate because they can do their job anywhere now, right? Whether it's on a semi-long-term basis or permanently. Example, right? I may as well be in Florida because I can do my job anywhere. Or I'm going to move to Alabama, Missouri, wherever it is, without telling my employer I'm doing that.
Okay. I'm going to let you win. For the record, I could have won if I wanted to. I'm going to let you win and have that be the final point because that is a perfect transition to the other topic we wanted to talk about today.
Right.
Right? Which is, why does it matter what state your employee's in?
Yeah.
Right?
So
why does it matter, Sarah? And I'm going to let you, you've done a ton of work on this.
I have. And I'll refrain from going on and on about it, but we have thought a tremendous amount about this, and have put into place a lot of resources to help employers with this issue. It matters because the laws of the state in which a person is working can apply to that person. Okay, so many employers may assume, well, because we're based in Michigan, all of our employees are subject to Michigan employment laws, even if they're living and working in other states.
They're a Michigan employee, quote unquote, is how a lot of our clients think of folks.
And that is often not the case. The employment laws of other states often say that law applies if your employee is working in that state. And so if you have an employee who's working remotely in Florida or Alabama or Missouri or New York or California or Oregon, there are likely laws of those states that apply to your employees. Okay?
So how do employers deal with this?
Because I bet they're just learning.
Everyone has these satellite offices now,
right.
In at least one other state. So, okay, so you just scared everyone.
Yeah, right.
Now let's get them to the next step.
Wait for it, right?
Yes.
Yes. Wait
how
for
can
it.
Employers deal with that.
So, we think this is really probably a three-part approach, right? The first one is HR folks need to know what specific exceptions or laws apply in each state in which they have people working. Okay. And I refer to this generally as like the checklist, right?
Oh, checklist.
You guys need to have in hand something to turn to and say, okay, I'm going to hire somebody who lives in Maine. What do I need to be thinking about? Is there some sort of paid time requirement? Am I not allowed to ask certain things during the interview? Can I do a criminal background check? Do I have to give them paid sick time? Right? What's the minimum wage? Do I have to pay them more than I'm used to paying them? Okay. You need something easy to look at and see what the special requirements are in that state. Okay. That's the first thing. That's what I call the checklist. And we've developed now checklists for every state in the country.
Good.
Okay. Now, next is the second part. Those checklists are only as good as the day they're written. Right?
That's also going to keep us in business, right, Sarah? Yeah.
Right. So, you also have to have the ability to stay on top of important legal changes in those states.
Right. Like paid time off.
Yes.
For instance, how we started the conversation.
You've got to know.
Patchwork.
Maybe when you hired Charlie in Maine, there was no paid sick leave.
Right.
But next year, Maine passes a paid sick leave requirement. You're going to need to know that.
Right.
Right? And so for that, we have put together what we're calling a bulletin, a National Employment Law Center bulletin. And we're people can sign up to get emails every 2 weeks that tell them every significant change in every state in the country. Wow. Now, it's easy to read and it's alphabetized. So if you only need Maine, you can just quickly look, has there been a change to Maine?
Thank goodness.
But if you've got 37 states, you have the ability to know what, if anything, has changed in those.
Yep.
And then we collect all of those in one particular site. So you can also be able to look back and see what has occurred in those states. Okay?
Got it.
So that's the second piece. And then the third piece, of course, is policies.
Policies.
Yay!
Our favorite.
So many employers have one handbook.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
That they would like to apply to employees. And so, but sometimes the terms of the handbook don't work for the laws of a particular state.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so they need handbook addendum, depending on how many states, right? Addenda, I think, is the plural. Addendum is the singular.
You're way over my head on that.
And so they need, by state, special addenda for those employees to sign who are working in certain states, right? If you're working in Indiana, so if you're a Michigan employer who wants to say you're not allowed to bring your guns to work, right? You're going to have to tell your Indiana employee that actually they can keep them locked in their car in the parking lot, for example, right?
Yep,
that's one of my favorite examples. And so you're going to likely want those addenda to apply to those employees. And we've put those together for all 50 states too. So we're doing our best to really be on top of this for employers. And the other thing I'll say is we do now have particular attorneys that are experts in every single state to. So we've assigned that task to one particular person. So we feel pretty comfortable. We're on top of it for clients. It is a lot for organizations and HR folks to get their arms around right now. But I do think it's I think it's doable. I mean, I think it's possible.
I think it's doable too. I think that it's doable if employers think about remote workers in different states as being a satellite office.
Yes.
I think then all of that makes sense. Right? Because the addenda, did I get that right?
Yes.
Grammatically, multiple. Yes. Addenda to handbooks. We were doing that for employers who had facilities in different states for years and years and years. That's not a new concept.
Right.
I think the new concept here is thinking about a remote worker in a different state.
Yes. It's not a facility, it's a house. Right. Exactly.
Office. And as long as we keep that framework in mind, I think the rest, I think employers will start getting their heads around it a little bit faster.
You got it.
Right?
You got it. Absolutely.
Okay. So should we get back to work?
We should.
Okay.
We should. Until next time, paid sick leave. Federal paid sick leave.
I can't wait.
All right.
See you,
Thanks
Sarah.
all.